So a few days ago, I made a video about deplatforming and the functional true value of free speech, that being that the most quote-unquote extreme positions or views or perspectives are the ones that free speech really exists for. It exists to protect that which is deemed as unacceptable or unworthy of discussion. And in that video, I mentioned the disproportionate influence over functional free speech held by social media platforms, crowdfunding websites, tech companies, etc. I mentioned the Anti-Defamation League and their penchant for, well, defaming people, slandering them, deplatforming them, and generally trying to mess up the lives of anyone whose opinions go against what the ADL deems acceptable. When I wrote and scripted my previous video, Google had not yet released their YouTube blog post about how the ADL was going to be involved in a new censorship effort on YouTube, in which, in YouTube's words, content which does not violate the terms of service, but may still be considered extremist or terroristic, is going to be placed in a limited state in which it will be less accessible to a normal YouTube user, in which it will not have likes or comments, or it won't show up in the recommended sidebar, or any of the normal features that we've all enjoyed on YouTube for more than 10 years now. And the so-called anti-diversity memo written by a Google engineer had not yet come to light. Now, for the record, this memo is anything but anti-diversity. All the guy was really saying was that he doesn't like discriminatory diversity initiatives and affirmative action policies. And he provides some very basic surface-level social science and biological facts about how men and women are different, and that much of this information can explain the difference in men and women's career choices, the difference in their performance in a given field, and so on. Nothing really controversial to any sensible person who's ever read anything about this stuff. I mean, this isn't a, wrecked feminist video, the wage gap doesn't, boring, tired. The point here is that this guy was not saying anything remotely extreme or, offensive to anybody who doesn't have a screw loose. Now, because even these most basic of objections to diversity initiatives and affirmative action policies and all of that stuff are verboten in a progressive-dominated corporate environment, that Google engineer has now been fired, of course, and many people in the company seem to be up in arms about this. And there have been screenshots and posts getting passed around from various Google employees' Twitter feeds and Google Plus pages and what have you, expressing their outrage that someone in their company would dare to point out that men and women are not neurologically, biologically, psychologically, etc. Men and women are not the same. In fact, this is apparently such a traumatic incident for Google as a company that CEO Sundar Pichai says he has cut his family vacation short to return to work and tackle the issues raised in the manifesto. Pichai will now face the difficult task of balancing what he calls the strong support of the right of Googlers to express themselves against those who violate the company's code of conduct in the process. And of course, all of this comes hot on the heels of the spontaneous and basically unexplained deletion of Jordan B. Peterson's YouTube and Gmail accounts. And in the end, he got them back because he has a big enough platform to make enough noise that Google wants to avoid a PR problem. But regardless of what you think of Peterson as a person, that should be concerning for everybody. Google effectively has a monopoly on these services. They're easily the biggest of any company offering these kinds of products. Now, I don't know what the solution to this is, really, under the current circumstances. Personally, if it were up to me, I would trust bust the shit out of Google. Break the company up into smaller companies, force them to relinquish the enormous power that they have, because people are really underselling the seriousness of this shit with Google. The size and scope and reach and the nature of an entity like Google is completely unprecedented in the history of private enterprise. You literally cannot use the internet without interacting with a Google product or service in some way, shape, or form. And I'm not talking about just using YouTube or the search or Gmail or something like that. I'm talking like if you're going to any kind of remotely mainstream website, you're probably interacting with Google Analytics at the very least. They have their fucking tentacles in literally everything. Maybe there's some way around that someone more savvy than myself would be able to cook up for people to use on an individual basis, but it wouldn't change the mainstream appeal and the industry stranglehold that Google already has. Now, it seems unlikely that there's really going to be a sort of Google eating itself situation, because the progressive nutcases seem to hold all the key reins of power that will get people fired and get people silenced and so on. And this is basically it. Like, this is the end game of the internet right here. A company that is totally controlled by progressive lunatics has its fingers in everything and is taking direction from the Anti-Defamation League on what will be acceptable or unacceptable on that company's platforms. And this is by no means just a problem for the fascists and the Nazis. You know, if you're a communist or a revolutionary socialist or any of these kinds of people, be careful talking about that system of international capital, because as far as the ADL is concerned, that's just a dog whistle for Jews. So have fun with that one. I mean, basically anyone who's doing political commentary outside of the mainstream is under the gun on this one. You know, the clock is ticking. So, I mean, I'm going to keep making content until whatever happens. I'm going to keep mirroring my stuff to other platforms, but, you know, don't be surprised if something happens to this channel or starts happening to other political channels you watch. So, yeah, just wanted to add on a few quick thoughts on that. Thanks for listening, guys. Real video coming soon.